It's us live. I
Sure
think
thing.
looks like we're live now.
Good
Hey guys,
stuff.
Dave here. Welcome to the Centurion's Review. I'm proud to have Joe Saleh here from Lucid Publications. Joe Saleh is the owner of Lucid Publications, and they make excellent miniatures and the Savage Core rule set. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Hey, no problem, Dave. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sure
Appreciate you getting
thing.
me on.
So I got 10 little questions here about your company. The first one is, how long has your company been around, and could you let us know how it began? Most game companies have an interesting starting story.
Yeah. Uh, I'm sorry to disappoint. I don't know how interesting the start is, but I guess it's sort of fairly quirky, I guess. Yeah. So we started about. I guess it's just coming up to 3 years now. So we're not that old in terms of games company standards. I would actually I don't know how much you know about Lucid and whatnot, but my dad's Steve Saleh, who does the designs. So he does, I guess like 99% of the designs we're currently selling. How the company actually started was he used to work with Warlord Games, and I was at university at the time, and we were talking, communicating. We had an idea to do a rule set for a line of his minis, which were currently at the time being sold under Warlord Games, which, as you've mentioned prior, just then, that is the Savage Core range. So I started to get to work on that, and my plan was to. I mean, I was doing English literature at uni, and it wasn't, it wasn't something. It was killing time, really, and I wanted to do something more business orientated, and the opportunity arose. Obviously, I have, somewhat of a passion and have grown up with the stuff, so it was easy for me to sink my teeth into. And I sat down and we wrote, the manuscript for Savage Core, bashed it about a bit, and yeah, we just took the stuff back off Warlord, and we're like, hey, we can do this ourselves. Um, and we just set up from there. So we just set up with one range. The rule book, obviously, we've expanded it quite considerably now. There's more people under the roof now, and I can't complain. And yeah, so that's like the origin story in a very loose sense.
Cool. Yeah, I've played your Savage Core game actually. I bought a copy of the book at a convention called Little Wars, which is in Illinois near
Yes.
Chicago. I played it. We had the Simian army when we played, and
Yeah,
we
the
also
chimps.
played with, I believe it was the Atlanteans. So another guy had a copy of the rules. So that was a cool game.
Yeah, it's like it's an easygoing game. It has elements from a lot of things. It has, your skirmish elements, has, some of the war gamey stuff, has a bit of video game sort of mechanics popped in and out, and with the encounters and whatnot. So it's all like a fast paced skirmish game. I know people don't like using the words fast play, but I can't find a synonym to say about it. So it's like, it's one of those. But yeah, I mean, we had fun with it, and it was good. It was a good jumping off point because it just gave us some substance to the miniatures line we were creating at the time, and gave us, an ability to expand into bigger titles. Like we've worked with Rick with the Elf King stuff and whatnot. But a lot of our thrust is really on making, good designs. I know I keep saying, but being creative with it, and just doing what we want to do and flowing in the direction of what we want intuitively, rather than having release schedules and certain things. As long as we can, cover what we need to, and expand and grow in the direction that, we enjoy and we want to go in. That's sort of how we deal with things. There's not some great whiteboard on the wall that says this quarter, this quarter, this quarter. It's just like, it's a lot more intuitive than that. So that's the jumping off point. We've gone into bigger stuff, and we're currently I know I'm diving ahead in conversation, but I'm just sort of in a train of thought at the minute. And currently we're working on I can't really say which, but we've got a big RPG project at the moment in the works as well. We're hoping to release around late January time
Can
as
I
well.
ask if is it fantasy or is it sci-fi or historical?
It's for one of our current rangers.
Ah, gotcha. All right.
Yeah, yeah. I can't be too forthright with it because I have a tendency to say stuff and then stuff changes. So I'm
I hear
trying
it. Yeah,
to
no
not
problem.
tongue tie myself in that regard, but it, it's quite a big project, and we're going to go into that direction quite heavily. So yeah,
Cool. So, can you let us? Second question: can you tell us
sure.
about some of the miniature lines you have and the rule sets you carry? Is Savage Core your only rule set, or do you have another rule set too?
It's so funny because the amount, I mean, I say this a lot as well, but the amount of stuff we bring out on a regular basis is so overwhelming that I actually forget. So I'm actually on the website now. And this is like miniature design wise, we bring out a hell of a lot of stuff. But
Sounds like my miniatures collection. 90% of the time, I can't tell you what's in it. I got so much of it.
yeah, have to check.
I've gone to the games shop and I'll see a blister and I'm like, do I own this blister? And I just can't remember if I own it or not.
No, I know. Obviously, I have. It's like that for me, just in the sense where I'm just like scrolling through the site, like, did we do? Is this out? Did we do this? But yeah, I mean, what's the most recent stuff? We have the Deaf Dealer for Zeta license, which has been a really good thing for us, which we've did quite a lot recently. Then we moved on to the Blades and Souls stuff. If you just got, if you can bring up our website as well, what would be good if you want to ask any questions about any specific project. If you bring up our website, Dave, and
All
just
right.
type in
What's the URL again? I
uh,
forget.
just
All right.
lucideyepublications.com, and then just
Oh,
hit
here it
new.
is.
Yeah, then just hit new releases, and then
Oh,
that's like our most recent stuff. So that
oh,
can be a
that's
frame
nice.
of reference
Oh,
for
I
you.
see you got Elf Briars, Elf
Yeah,
Skylads,
yeah, and
all
then we've
sorts
done
of
the Jim
stuff.
Fitzpatrick stuff. So in terms of ranges, rule sets, we've not been massively concentrating on the rule sets at the moment. However, let me go on it for you. Let me just load it. Right, so yeah, so we've done a few RPG AYE stuff, which is an add your engine system, which is almost like a flavored skin we've done for RPGs. We've done a Savage Core one, we've done a Toon Realms one. I'm just referring to this from the PDF page, and then we've brought out two Elf King books, the main core rule books, and an expansion we did with Rick Priestley. We then brought out a free to play Elf King, which you guys, if anyone's listening, can download that, or anyone's watching back. I don't know where you upload, Dave, YouTube or whatnot. But
Hmm.
we've got all that stuff. So we've got a host of free PDF entry points for our games, and then we do have our games as obviously print and PDF books you can buy. But we haven't worked on something that recently. When I say not recently, though, I mean a few months. We actually recently brought out a boxed game. So it's a miniatures based game with the rules all free. And you can get a blister pack with a couple of boxes. We have a realistic one. And we have a fantasy version, so you can play as fantasy boxers and more realistic based boxers, which is like a little pulp game, which is great fun, which is knocking out, and it's a 1v1. You can play it with someone. Let me go on it. We've got who have we got here? Let me have a look for you. Yeah, one referee, Bazooka Joe, and Rocky Razor. That's one pack, and that's $8.50, and that contains everything you need to play boxed. And then we also have the fantasy box, which contains more minis. But yeah, we sort of like the idea of bringing out these core smaller games, giving the rules out for free in PDF format, and sort of selling the minis along with it. So that's like the new formula we've tried, rather than moving away from the core bigger game books. We've sort of been dabbling with that design for a little bit, but that's not recent. A lot in the more recent months, we've just been doing a lot of designs for miniatures. Be that way out west, we've released a new range which is sort of more cowboy western stuff. Root Elves, which is our sort of take on a more wood elf based stuff, which is in our range Blades and Souls, which is more visceral sort of throwback old school fantasy. And then we've just released the other week the Jim Fitzpatrick collectible mini, which is the official. We work with Jim with that stuff quite closely, bringing out his artwork in design format. So yeah, so that's sort of like there's a lot going on, and I'm sort of covering it broadly rather than in depth, but that's what we've got.
Nice. Sounds like you got a great product line there.
Yeah, definitely. We bring stuff out, and then we sort of with an eye to what range it'll be in. So our ranges are more like the flavor and the theme of what the mini is and where it sits and
Hmm.
how it fits into things. So that's sort of how we work, the design aspect and the product aspect. So that's why there's sort of quite a lot of colorful branding and graphics and whatnot. They all sit in their own sort of like catchment of range and theme. So yeah, that's sort of how we work, which is a bit unconventional in terms of miniature company and design and release schedule. But that's how we found benefits, is how we can get the most product out and how we can keep stuff going and do what we want to do, as well as make product that people want to buy. So that's sort of how we look at it.
Nice. So is your father the sole sculptor for the business, or do you have some freelance
We
artists that you
we
use?
we uh when you say artists, do you mean other
A
designers?
sculptor.
Yeah, so we've worked with other designers. We have them on our website, in certain ranges, but the bulk of the range and the designing is done by my dad. Yeah, I mean the guy can, he's been doing it for however many years now. He's got a great backlog. He's I think he's the best, and he makes the best stuff, so he can do it quick, and he can design to a caliber that's great and obviously sells. So we try to stick with stuff in house like that a lot of the time. Like we do our manufacturing in house as well.
That's good.
We tend to try not to outsource stuff if we can help it, just because I don't like the sort of lack of control and direction you get when you outsource a lot of your stuff. Like a bit's fine, don't get me wrong, a bit of it's fine, but when it gets overwhelming, you sort of then have to rely more on release schedules and stuff coming back, and that's what we try and stay away from, because it affects how we, create and release products. So that's sort of our philosophy on that.
Nice. So do you have a US distributor? Would it be Recreational Conflict by any chance, or?
Yeah, I believe the guy at Retcon is called Dave as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's got some bits. I don't think he carries the whole range, but he definitely has some bits. I think he's more concentrated on Savage Core.
I think he's the one I bought Savage
Yeah,
Core from at Little Wars.
yeah, he's got some stuff. What we do a lot of the time, we work with Your Hobby Place. We work with Badger Games. We work with Slow Def Games. We work with a good list of US retailers, and then distributors. We work with Golden Distribution as well, who does quite a lot of selling to stores. Like there's a lot of stores that carry the stuff in the US brick and mortar stores that I don't know of, just because Golden Distribution deals with a lot of independent stores in the US that I don't necessarily see, because he'll take the product, he'll say how much they need, and then he'll ship it out to those guys. So, a lot of the time I've just punched in Lucid and seen a whole host of stores selling it in the US, but I don't know about them personally. I don't deal with I deal with a handful of guys in the US shops, but a lot of the guys is through Golden. So I don't necessarily know where the product is in the States all the time.
Gotcha.
So
So
yeah.
when you have a sculptor create a miniature for you guys, do you do it off? Do you come up with like concept artwork that you draw out, or do you just tell like your father, use your imagination and come up
No.
with something, or is it planned in advance before you start sculpting?
It's just part of the artistic process, which is basically, the guy just does it. It's, it's years of, you know, training that muscle. It's natural, it's intuitive. If he wants to make something, he'll make it, and it'll be done, and it'll be castable, and it'll be, designed to the standard that it needs to be to come out the mold, and it will be designed to the standard it needs to be to fit on a base blister and all this jazz. So it's just so intuitive at this point. There's not really any conversation that's been had. And I know that sounds, might sound a bit ethereal, but it's not really. It's like we have a conversation. Obviously, we have loose concepts. We're like, oh, how about this? How about this? But really, it just comes down to what the guy wants to do. And then whatever he churns out is what it is. There's no real. You know what I mean? It's not a sausage factory. There's no real mechanical process to it. It's just, hey, I'll text the guy. I'll just be like, or I'll see him and working. I'll just be like, what are you working on at the minute? And he'll just say, oh, these bits, and we'll just be like, okay, cool. We'll make it work. That's sort of how we do it. It's
Nice.
yeah,
All right. And you already said that you cast your own miniatures.
yeah.
Do you create your molds too in house?
Yeah, so one of the let me think about this. The only processes we, in terms of miniature making, don't have in house is mold making, and is there another one? Let me think dead quick. No, we did our resin stuff in house as well. No, yeah.
Oh,
So the mo
you're doing your resin too. That's
we
awesome.
we've basically it's not a long story, it's a convoluted story, but a lot of the our customers are always asking for our pig faced orcs box set, which is a white plastic we have, which is a special plastic that we have worked in a certain way, which makes stuff quite quick. Now the problem being is during the initial COVID stuff, the manufacturer for that plastic has gone out of business. So we haven't been able to kick that sector of our business back into action, given that the provider for that. And this is, another thing about outsourcing, getting stuff, not in house. It's like we haven't been able to kick that back up yet. But we do have the facilities in house. We have all the machinery and whatnot to do that, and we have been working on it. So it is definitely on our list. It's just we've got to prioritize at the moment. But sorry, mold making we do not do in house. No, we have we're using a very good guy who's down the road. He's about 7 minutes down the road in Nottingham, and we drop off and pick up, within the week. So it's all very close by and easy to do. But yeah, that's the only process we don't have.
Gotcha. All right, so I saw you have plastic miniatures on your website. So is that going to be the future for you, more and more plastic figures, or are you going to concentrate on the metal ones in the future?
So that's sort of what I just briefly touched upon them, which is the plastic we haven't been able to kick back into action, given that the manufacturer we had went out of business who provided us with that. However, that's not to say it's not happening. We have a lot of ideas and a lot of stuff we want to do with it. However, I'm sort of personally not necessarily against the idea, but don't see it as sort of a conflicting idea that metal past, plastic future, and it's like a polarized system. I don't see it like that. I think metal's different. Different types of buyers like metal, different types of buyers like plastic. There is people who like both, but I don't think it's as big a deal as people make it out to be. It's like if plastic can be done cheaper and it can be done as efficiently and stuff, then yeah, I'd love to give people both the option. But I love the metal stuff. It holds its value. You can paint it. It looks great. There's nothing quite like having something sturdy on the table. And, when it's all painted up, that weight to it, I think it's human nature to crave that sort of real aspect of things and see it in its flesh. And, like a statuette, it looks great. It looks cool. So I like that. I'm a big fan of it. But yeah, obviously would like to give in the future, as we had done previously for a fleeting amount of time, give people the option with the Ghost range we have. But at the minute, we're concentrating on the stuff that moves and the stuff that sells. And even with all that stuff, the metal stuff was the stuff that moved the most. So
Nice. Yeah, I like metal
yeah,
miniatures myself
yeah,
because they have great detail, and the good thing is there's less pieces you have to glue together. Whereas you buy some of these plastic figures, I mean, there's 5 or 6 pieces you got to glue together, so it just adds more time to
100%.
getting the figures prepped to play.
Like I said, I've got nothing against it in essence, but yeah, like what we try and do with our metal stuff, like we try and keep it clean into as less parts as possible. And a lot of our stuff, like even our most intricate high price stuff, is one piece or as few as physically possible. And we try and keep it like that because we want people to have a product and they get it out of their packet and they're like, cool, I just need to prime this. You know what I mean? There's no flash. It's a crisp casting. It looks great. And like, I can be priming this and I can be painting it up tonight. Like that's what we want. We want that accessibility of it. And I think we have achieved that, and we try to achieve that with our designs, which starts at the design process and the castability and making it all the way, to the packet and people getting it. So that's a big priority for us. Yeah, 100%.
Nice. So your Savage Core game, you have some really cool factions for it. I was just curious, who wrote the storyline for that game? Because it's actually very interesting.
So I'm not going to take credit for that. My dad did that. My dad did the narrative and the backdrop and whatnot, and that was what I took to make into the initial manuscript for the rules. So that's all his stuff. That's he's he's a master of that stuff. He does it like off his own back instantaneously, and that's sort of what we did for the Elf King process as well, with the flavor and the lore and whatnot. And that's infinitely expandable, and will be obviously something we'll be working towards quite vehemently. But yeah, the backdrop and everything's all fresh out the pan from him, and it's served as well. Yeah, definitely in terms of the designs and whatnot, and it's caught on and it does well. Like we're big fans of our Savage Core stuff because it's like the initial stuff we did. And sometimes you do stuff and you're like, hey, is this going to be better? Because we did something at first, which was pretty strong. In terms of our set, like what we see as sales now, I always think, well, no, I thought initially like, is that just what it is? And then you do other stuff and you're like, oh no, that's just good. We do well on that. It's like, yeah. So we'll always be expanding the Savage Core stuff. It's a big IP to us, and we'll constantly be adding to it and whatnot.
Nice. So when you're gaming on your own, obviously you play your own games and stuff. Are there any games you play other than ones that you create?
So I've been asked this question a couple of times, and it's always funny because there is that assumption, and I if I was interviewing a guy from myself, like a games company, I'd have that assumption as well. But honestly, Dave, I don't have time to do anything, and I know that's such a cliche response, but I don't. Like, for example, we've been working today, and then my evening's just been taken up at the moment with writing stuff for the new stuff we've got coming out. Like, don't get me wrong, I have an interest in stuff and I look at it, but for me, it's not. I try and delineate a clear line between work and pleasure. I like the fact that there's crossover, and I like the fact that I can do something recreationally, as work, but I have to delineate between that because I like to try and keep objective when doing the work stuff. So don't get me wrong, like games and stuff, I look at them, I'm interested, but I'm more interested at the concept as a whole and whatnot, and the product and how it looks and all this stuff. Like I'll whiz through it and be like, oh, looks good, blah blah blah. But to actually sit down and play it for me, it's not something I have access to do at the minute. Don't get me wrong, there'll be a time in my life where I'll sit down and do that more so. But at the minute, it's 100 miles an hour at the minute, so it's just cracking on with stuff really.
Yeah, I had a friend who was a game shop owner. He basically said the same thing you did. Before he owned the game shop, he played games like crazy. But once he owned the game shop and he was working like massive hours, he like hardly ever played any games. So people would be surprised to hear that he doesn't really play anything anymore.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand completely. It's it's about, I guess, having a healthy understanding of it and knowing, this is recreational and this is fun. I just can't be as engaged as a consumer as I otherwise might like to be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But well, don't get, sorry, go on. I interrupted.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but the allure's still there. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'd love to kick back and play some stuff and just, but it is what it is, essentially.
Great. Well, thanks. This is all the questions I had. Great interview, and thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you for seeing me earlier, and I'm sorry for messing you about with the time because
no
I got
problem.
completely confused. My fault.
It's all right. All right. Awesome. Have a good day.
Thank you. I will.
You're
do.
welcome.
And you, Dave.